Roy Chen pressed his palm against the bioscanner and stepped into the quantum garden, breathing in the familiar mix of Earth's jasmine and something indefinably alien that made his chest tighten with wonder. The massive greenhouse occupied the heart of Nexus 7, a research station floating in the neutral zone between human and Zilithian space. Here, plants from both worlds grew side by side in carefully controlled harmony, their roots intertwining in ways that defied conventional biology. "Good morning, beautiful," Roy whispered to a cluster of silver-leafed Terran roses that had somehow learned to sing in harmony with nearby Zilithian crystal flowers. The melodic humming filled the air as he began his daily rounds, checking nutrient levels and monitoring the delicate balance that kept this miracle of cooperation alive. At 28, Roy had spent 5 years on Nexus 7, longer than any other xenobotanist had managed. Most researchers burned out after 18 months, overwhelmed by the complexity of managing flora from two completely different evolutionary trees, but Roy thrived on the challenge. Each day brought new discoveries about how life could adapt and merge when given the chance. The cum unit on his wrist chirped softly. "Roy, please report to my office immediately." Director Hawthorne's voice carried its usual no-nonsense tone. "We have a situation." Roy frowned, glancing at the diagnostic displays around the garden. Everything appeared stable, the various ecosystems humming along in perfect synchronization. He sealed the environment controls and made his way through the station's curved corridors to the administrative sector. Director Hawthorne looked up from her desk as Roy entered, her gray hair pulled back in its perpetual severe bun. Behind her, the massive viewport showed the swirling beauty of the Helix Nebula, its colors shifting through the spectrum like a cosmic kaleidoscope. "Sit down, Roy. We need to discuss the New Zilithian liaison." Roy settled into the chair across from her desk. "I thought Dr. Velteron was scheduled to arrive next month." Change of plans. The Zilithian High Council decided to send someone immediately. Hawthorne's expression grew stern. "Her name is Amelia Vexeri, and she'll be working directly with you on the garden project. I want you to understand something, Chen. This assignment is crucial for both our species. The botanical research happening in that garden could revolutionize terraforming for both humans and Zilithians. We cannot afford any complications." "What kind of complications?" Roy asked, though he suspected he knew where this was heading. "The kind that happen when humans get too comfortable around aliens." Hawthorne replied bluntly. "I've seen your reports, Roy. You write about those plants like they're your children. That level of emotional investment makes some people nervous. The Zilithian working directly alongside you, I need to know you'll maintain professional boundaries." Roy felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Director, my emotional connection to the garden is exactly why it's thriving. These aren't just specimens to be cataloged. They're living beings forming unprecedented partnerships. Just remember that you're human, and she's not." Hawthorne's tone softened slightly. "Zilithians may look similar to us, but they think differently, feel differently. Don't forget that." An hour later, Roy stood in the docking bay watching the sleek Zilithian transport settle onto the landing pad with barely a whisper of displaced air. The airlock cycled through its sequence, and Roy found himself holding his breath as the door slid open. Amelia Vexeri stepped through the portal, and Roy's breath caught in his throat.
Ow.
She stood nearly 6 feet tall, her lithe form moving with an otherworldly grace. Her skin held a subtle luminescence, like moonlight on water, and delicate crystalline. Formations traced elegant patterns along her temples and neck. Her hair cascaded in waves of deep violet, and her eyes held the depth of distant galaxies. But it was the way she carried herself that truly struck Roy with quiet confidence and a sense of wonder that reminded him of his first day in the quantum garden. "Dr. Chen." Her voice held a musical quality that seemed to resonate in Roy's chest. "I am Amelia Vexeri. I look forward to our collaboration." Roy stepped forward, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting. "Welcome to Nexus 7, Dr. Vexeri. I'm honored to work with you." Amelia stared at his outstretched hand for a moment, her expression shifting through what Roy couldn't quite read. Then, instead of taking his hand, she stepped back and placed both palms together before her chest, bowing slightly. "Forgive me," she said, her luminescent patterns flickering in what Roy sensed was embarrassment. Among my people, unexpected physical contact can be overwhelming. We are naturally empathic, and skin contact creates an immediate emotional connection. Roy felt his cheeks burn as he quickly lowered his hand. I apologize. I should have researched Silithian customs more thoroughly. It is no matter, Amelia replied, though her crystalline formations seemed to dim slightly. Perhaps you could show me to the quantum garden? I am eager to begin our work. As they walked through the station corridors, Roy found himself stealing glances at his new colleague. Her empathic abilities explained the subtle way she seemed to react to the emotions of crew members they passed, her luminescent patterns shifting in response to their unspoken feelings. You can sense what people are feeling, Roy asked as they entered the garden's outer chamber. To some degree, yes. It is why physical contact is significant for my people. Touch creates a deeper connection, sharing not just emotions but memories and thoughts. She paused at the bioscanner. It can be quite intense. Roy placed his palm on the scanner and gestured for Amelia to do the same. The garden's security system needs to recognize both of us. As Amelia reached for the scanner, her hand accidentally brushed against Roy's. The contact lasted only a split second, but Roy felt a jolt of connection unlike anything he'd ever experienced. For that brief moment, he sensed Amelia's wonder at the beauty of the station, her nervousness about the assignment, and underneath it all, a profound loneliness that matched his own. Amelia jerked her hand back, her eyes wide with surprise. I am sorry. That was unintentional. It's okay, Roy said softly, though his heart was racing. What did you feel? Her luminescent patterns pulsed in slow, steady rhythms. Kindness. In a deep love for growing things, she met his eyes. You truly care for the plants in your care? The bioscanner accepted both their biometric signatures, and the inner door slid open. Amelia stepped into the quantum garden and stopped completely, her breath catching in wonder. The space stretched out like a cathedral of living light. Terran oak trees stood beside crystalline Zilithian, singing trees, their branches intertwined in impossible harmony. Flowers from Earth bloomed alongside glowing fungi from Zilithian swamps, their combined fragrances creating a symphony of scents that spoke of home to both species. Ah, the ancient lights, Amelia whispered, her voice filled with reverence. This is incredible. Roy felt a surge of pride watching her reaction. 5 years of careful cultivation and cross-pollination experiments. We've created 17 new hybrid species, each one teaching us something new about how life adapts and thrives. Amelia moved deeper into the garden, her empathic abilities seemingly extending to the plants themselves. Roy watched in fascination as her crystalline patterns began to pulse in rhythm with the singing trees, their melodic humming growing more complex in response to her presence. They recognize you, Roy breathed. I've never seen them respond to anyone like that. Silithian biology includes plant-like elements, Amelia explained, running her fingers along the bark of a singing tree. We share certain resonant frequencies with flora from our world. They spent the morning touring the garden, Roy explaining the various experiments and Amelia offering insights from Zilithian botany that made Roy see his work in entirely new ways. Despite their awkward beginning, they fell into an easy rhythm of collaboration, their different perspectives complementing each other perfectly. It was while examining a struggling hybrid vine that their true breakthrough came. The plant, a fusion of earth ivy and Zilithian light moss, had been failing for weeks despite Roy's best efforts. The cellular structure is rejecting the symbiosis, Roy explained, showing Amelia the microscopic readings. Can't figure out what's missing. Amelia studied the data, her brow furrowed in concentration. May I try something? It requires physical contact with both the plant and you. Roy nodded without hesitation. Whatever might help. Amelia placed one hand on the failing vine and extended her other toward Roy. The connection will let me share what I'm sensing from the plant with you. Your knowledge combined with my empathic abilities might reveal the solution. Roy took her hand, and immediately the garden around them seemed to explode into sensation. Through Amelia's empathic abilities, he could feel the vine's confusion, its inability to reconcile two completely different biological imperatives. But more than that, he could sense Amelia's wonder at his deep emotional connection. to every plant in the garden. Together, they understood. The vine needed more than just the right nutrients and environment. It needed to feel the emotional resonance between its two biological heritages, the way Roy cherished earth plants and Amelia communed with Zilithian flora. Working in perfect synchronization, they adjusted the vine's growing medium, adding trace elements that would enhance its ability to sense emotional resonance. Within minutes, the plant began to straighten and strengthen, its leaves taking on a healthy glow that combined the best of both worlds. "We did it," Roy said, not letting go of Amelia's hand. "We actually saved it." Amelia smiled, her luminescent patterns dancing with joy. "No, Roy, we didn't just save it. We taught it how to be itself." In that moment, surrounded by the singing of crystal trees and the gentle hum of thriving hybrid plants, Roy realized that something fundamental had changed. The connection he felt with Amelia went deeper than professional collaboration or even the empathic link they'd shared. It was the recognition of a kindred spirit, someone who understood that love and care were just as important as science and use equate. Data, as they stood together in the heart of the quantum garden, their hands still joined and their hearts beating in rhythm with the living symphony around them. Roy knew that his life on Nexus 7 would never be the same. He had found not just a research partner, but someone who saw the universe the way he did, as a place where impossible things could flourish when tended with enough love and wonder. The hybrid vine continued to grow, its leaves shimmering with the combined light of two worlds, a living symbol of what could happen when different forms of life learned to trust and support each other. And in the days that followed, as Roy and Amelia worked side by side in the garden, they would discover that some of the most beautiful things in the universe grew not from the soil, but from the connections between souls brave enough to reach across the vast darkness of space and touch each other's hearts. 3 months had passed since Amelia's arrival on Nexus 7, and the quantum garden had transformed into something beyond Roy's wildest dreams. Under their combined care, the hybrid species flourished with unprecedented vigor, creating cascading ecosystems that seemed to pulse with their own living intelligence. But it was the transformation in Roy himself that truly amazed him. Each morning, he found himself eager not just to tend the plants, but to share the experience with Amelia. Their work had evolved into an intricate dance of collaboration, her empathic abilities complementing his scientific intuition in ways that produced results neither could achieve alone. More than that, though, was the way she made him see the garden through new eyes, not just as a collection of specimens, but as a community of living beings choosing to trust and support each other across the boundaries of biology and origin. "The Harmony Moss is singing a new song today," Amelia observed as they entered the garden together. Her crystalline formations caught the filtered starlight streaming through the transparent dome, casting prismatic patterns across the walls. Roy paused to listen to the soft, melodic humming that filled the air. The hybrid moss they had developed 2 weeks ago had begun producing sounds that seemed to blend earthbird songs with Zilithian crystal chimes. "It's responding to your emotional state," he said, studying her luminescent patterns. "You seem different today, happy, but also nervous." Amelia's patterns shifted to a deeper blue, confirming his observation. "Received a message from the Zilithian High Council this morning. They are sending a representative to evaluate our progress." "That sounds like good news," Roy said, though something in her tone suggested otherwise. "The representative is Nixandra Velthier," Amelia replied, her voice carrying a note of concern. "She was my research partner before I came here. We were quite close." Roy felt an unexpected stab of something that took him a moment to recognize as jealousy. Over the months, he and Amelia had grown closer in ways that transcended their professional collaboration. They shared meals, worked late into the night discussing botanical theories, and had developed a friendship that felt more natural and comfortable than any relationship Roy had ever experienced. The thought of someone from Amelia's past disrupting that connection unsettled him more than he cared to admit. "Will she be working with us in the garden?" Roy asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "That depends on her evaluation," Amelia said. "Nixandra is brilliant, but she has very traditional views about interspecies collaboration. She believes that working too closely with humans compromises Zilithian scientific objectivity. Before Roy could respond, the garden's communication system crackled to life. Dr. Chen, Dr. Vexeri, please report to the main conference room. Immediately, we have visitors. They made their way through the station corridors, Roy noting how crew members they passed seemed unusually tense. In the conference room, they found Director Hawthorne standing beside two newcomers, a stern-faced human in military uniform and a Zilithian woman whose crystalline formations seemed to pulse with barely contained intensity. Dr. Chen, Dr. Vexeri, Director Hawthorne began formally. I'd like you to meet Captain Torres from Earth Central Command and Nixandra Velthier from the Zilithian Science Collective. Captain Torres stepped forward, his dark eyes scrutinizing Roy with uncomfortable intensity. Dr. Chen, I'm here to investigate reports of concerning developments in the cultural exchange program, specifically allegations that personal relationships between human and Zilithian personnel may be compromising mission objectives. Roy felt his heart skip a beat, but before he could respond, Nixandra moved to stand beside Amelia. Where Amelia's luminescence was warm and inviting, Nixandra's patterns seemed sharp and cold, like fractured ice. Amelia, Nixandra said, her voice carrying harmonics that Roy couldn't quite interpret, I have been concerned about the reports of your work here. The level of emotional investment described in your research logs is unprecedented and potentially dangerous. Amelia's patterns shifted to defensive configurations. My emotional connection to the work has enhanced my effectiveness, not compromised it. The results speak for themselves. Do they? Nixandra challenged. Or have you simply learned to rationalize the corruption of proper scientific methodology? Captain Torres nodded approvingly. That's exactly the kind of thinking that concerns Earth Command. Dr. Chen. Your psychological profiles show increasing attachment to alien plant life and now, apparently, to alien personnel. Such attachments can cloud judgment and compromise loyalty. Roy felt anger rising in his chest. With respect, Captain, my work in the quantum garden has produced breakthrough results that benefit both species. Any emotional investment I have serves the mission, not hinders it. Remains to be determined, Captain Torres replied. I'll be conducting a full investigation of all garden operations. I trust you'll cooperate completely. Over the following days, the investigation cast a shadow over everything Roy and Amelia did. Captain Torres seemed to appear everywhere, taking notes and asking probing questions about their collaboration. Methods. Nixandra installed herself in the garden, ostensibly to observe their work, but clearly trying to drive a wedge between Roy and Amelia. You have changed, Amelia, Nixandra said one afternoon as they worked on a new hybrid orchid. Your patterns show emotional resonances I have never seen in you before. This human has influenced you in ways that concern me. Roy tried to focus on his data readings, but he couldn't help listening to their conversation in the melodic Zilithian language that Amelia had been teaching him to understand. Roy has taught me that science and emotion need not be enemies. Amelia replied in the same language. Our work together has shown me possibilities I never imagined. Possibilities or fantasies? Nixandra's voice carried sharp harmonics of disapproval. You speak of this human with the resonance patterns typically reserved for potential life mates. Surely you understand how impossible such connections are between our species. Roy's hands stilled on his instruments. In all their time together, he and Amelia had carefully avoided discussing the growing connection between them, perhaps because they both sensed how dangerous such a conversation might be. What I understand, Amelia said quietly, is that Roy sees the universe the way I do, as a place where different forms of life can choose to support and nurture each other. If that understanding has created a bond between us, then I treasure that bond. That evening, Roy found himself alone in the garden after Amelia left for a private meeting with Nixandra. The plant seemed to sense his emotional turmoil, the harmony moss shifting its song to minor keys. While the crystal flowers dimmed their usual brilliant glow, he was examining a struggling seedling when the garden's emergency systems suddenly activated. Alarms blared throughout the station as artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending equipment and loose debris flying through the corridors. "All personnel to emergency stations," Director Hawthorne's voice echoed through the comm system. "We're experiencing gravitational distortions from an incoming cosmic storm. Estimated impact in 30 minutes. Roy's blood ran cold. Cosmic storms were rare but devastating phenomena that could tear a space station apart if not properly managed. More immediately concerning, the gravitational fluctuations could destroy the delicate environmental balance that kept the garden's hybrid ecosystems alive. He was racing to implement emergency protocols when Amelia burst through the garden doors, her crystalline formations blazing with urgency. "Roy, the storm is stronger than predicted," she said breathlessly. "The station's shields won't be sufficient. Captain Torres is ordering an evacuation, but that means abandoning the garden." Roy looked around at the miraculous community of life they had built together. Hybrid plants that represented years of careful cultivation and the hope of both species for a shared future. "We can't let it all die. These plants exist nowhere else in the universe." Amelia moved to stand beside him, her hand almost touching his. "The storm will disrupt the gravitational fields that keep the different atmospheric zones stable. Without constant adjustment, the garden's environment will collapse within hours." "Then we adjust it constantly," Roy said, his mind racing through possibilities. "The environmental controls can be operated manually, but it would require someone monitoring every zone simultaneously. It's impossible for one person," Amelia agreed. "But perhaps not for two people working in perfect synchronization," Roy understood. Immediately, their empathic connection, the bond that had grown stronger with each day of working together, could allow them to coordinate the garden's systems with a precision no individual could achieve. "Captain Torres will never approve us." "Staying," Roy said. "Then we don't ask permission," Amelia replied, her patterns shifting to determined configurations. "We simply do what must be done." As the first waves of the cosmic storm struck Nexus 7, Roy and Amelia worked side by side in the garden's control center, their hands joined to maintain the empathic link that allowed them to monitor dozens of environmental zones simultaneously. Through Amelia's abilities, Roy could sense the distress of individual plants throughout the garden, while his knowledge of their specific needs guided their coordinated responses. The station shuddered around them as gravitational waves twisted space itself. But within the garden, they maintained perfect stability. Hour after hour, they adjusted atmospheric pressure, temperature, humidity, and nutrient flows with the precision of a symphony conductor leading an orchestra. "Hull breach in Section 7, came Director Hawthorne's voice over the comm. "All remaining personnel to the emergency pods."
"We're not leaving,"
Roy replied, never taking his eyes off the environmental displays. "Roy, that's an order." "Director," Amelia interjected, her voice carrying the harmonics of absolute certainty. "If we abandon the garden now, we lose not just the plants, but 5 years of irreplaceable research. The hybrid species we've developed could revolutionize terraforming for both our peoples." Through their joined hands, Roy felt Amelia's determination matching his own. They had found something worth protecting, worth risking everything to preserve. The storm raged for 6 more hours, each wave of gravitational distortion threatening to tear the garden apart. But Roy and Amelia held it together through sheer force of will and the strength of their connection. Their consciousness merged so completely that they moved and thought as one being. When the storm finally passed and the station's systems stabilized, they collapsed together among the singing trees, exhausted but triumphant. Around them, the garden bloomed with renewed vigor, as if the plants themselves understood they had been saved by an act of love. Captain Torres found them there an hour later, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the thriving ecosystem that should have been destroyed. "I don't understand how you did it," he said finally. "The gravitational fluctuations should have killed everything in here." Roy and Amelia exchanged glances, their connection still humming between them like a living thing. "We worked together," Roy said simply. "Together," Captain Torres repeated, his tone suggesting the word left a bitter taste. Dr. Chen, your decision to disobey evacuation orders has been noted, as has your apparent willingness to risk your life for alien plant specimens and alien colleagues. I risked my life for something beautiful and irreplaceable, Roy replied without backing down. I'd do it again. Captain Torres turned to Amelia. Dr. Vex 3. Your people value logic and objectivity above all else. You chose to stay here based on what can only be described as an emotional decision. Amelia's luminescent patterns pulsed with quiet strength. I chose to stay because some things transcend the boundaries of species and logic. What Roy and I have built here together represents the best possibilities of both our peoples. What you've built, Nixandra said, stepping into the garden behind Captain Torres. It's a dangerous illusion that compromises both your scientific objectivity and your loyalty to your respective species. But as she spoke, her gaze moved around the garden, taking in the impossible beauty of plants from two worlds growing in perfect harmony. Roy saw something flicker in her crystalline formations, a moment of wonder that she quickly suppressed. The investigation will continue, Captain Torres announced. But given that your actions saved valuable research assets, there will be no immediate disciplinary action. After the officials left, Roy and Amelia sat together in the heart of the garden, surrounded by the gentle music of crystal flowers and the soft glow of bioluminescent vines. They're going to try to separate us, Roy said quietly. I know, Amelia replied, her hand finding his in the dim light. But they cannot separate what we've discovered together. The garden will always be proof that different forms of life can choose to support each other, can choose to become something greater than the sum of their parts. Roy squeezed her hand gently, marveling at how natural the connection felt, despite all the warnings about the dangers of interspecies relationships. Whatever happens, I want you to know that working with you, building this place with you has been the most meaningful experience of my life. Amelia's patterns shifted to the warm, steady rhythm he had learned meant deep contentment. What it means to love something so completely that you would risk everything to protect it. Around them, the garden hummed with life and possibility, a living testament to the power of connection across the vast distances that separated worlds and species. But as they sat together in the gentle starlight, both Roy and Amelia knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. The investigation was far from over, and the forces arrayed against them would not give up easily. Yet they also knew that what they had found together in the work, in each other, and in the miraculous community of life they had nurtured, was worth fighting for. Some bonds, they had learned, were strong enough to survive even the storms that shook the very morning. Foundations of space and time, the tribunal chamber aboard the diplomatic vessel Unity stretched out like an arena of judgment. Its curved walls lined with representatives from both human and Zilithian governments. Roy felt the weight of dozens of eyes upon him as he stood beside Amelia in the center of the chamber, their hands joined in a gesture that had become both natural and defiant. Judge Mercer, a stern woman whose silver hair spoke of decades in diplomatic service, presided over the human delegation. Across from her, High Curator Zethmira commanded the Zilithian contingent, her ancient crystalline formations pulsing with the slow, measured rhythms of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. Dr. Chen, Dr. Vexari, Judge Mercer began, her voice carrying the authority of Earth's Central Command. You stand accused of conduct unbecoming to your respective species and positions, specifically that your personal relationship has compromised your professional judgment and potentially endangered the cultural exchange program that represents decades of careful diplomatic work. Roy squeezed Amelia's hand gently, drawing strength from their connection. Over the past week, since formal charges had been filed, they had faced a barrage of interviews, psychological evaluations, and formal depositions. Throughout it all, they had maintained their position that their relationship enhanced rather than hindered their work. High Curator Zethmira spoke next, her voice carrying the harmonic resonances that made Zilithian speech so hauntingly beautiful. The Zilithian Science Collective has reviewed the evidence and finds cause for concern. Dr. Vexari, your emotional resonance patterns show unprecedented bonding with a non-Zilithian entity. Such attachments are not merely unusual, they are potentially dangerous to your psychological stability and scientific objectivity. From the observation gallery, Roy caught sight of supportive faces in the crowd. Dr. Valdez, head of xenobiology, had flown in from Earth specifically to testify on their behalf. Lieutenant Park, a young officer who had been inspired by their story, sat beside Professor Winters, Roy's former mentor. Even some of the Nexus 7 crew had requested permission to attend, but it was the presence of Nixandra in the front row that drew Roy's attention. Over the past months, something had changed in Amelia's former research partner. The rigid disapproval had given way to something more complex, as if witnessing the success of the quantum garden had challenged her fundamental beliefs about interspecies cooperation. "Your Honor," Roy said, stepping forward slightly, "we request permission to present our case not as a defense of our actions, but as a proposal for the future of human-Zilithian cooperation." Judge Mercer's eyebrows rose slightly. "This is a disciplinary hearing, Dr. Chen, not a policy discussion." "With respect, Judge Mercer," Amelia interjected, her luminescent patterns brightening with determination, "our relationship cannot be separated from our work. They are part of the same discovery, the same breakthrough that has transformed the quantum garden into something unprecedented." High Curator Ethmira leaned forward, her ancient eyes studying them with keen interest. "You claim your personal bond enhances your professional capabilities. This is a significant assertion that requires substantial proof." Dr. Valdez stood up in the gallery. "Your Honors, if I may, the results speak for themselves. The hybrid species developed by Dr. Chen and Dr. Vexeri have survival rates nearly 3 times higher than any previous interspecies botanical experiments. Their collaboration has produced breakthroughs that individual researchers from either species had failed to achieve in decades of separate effort." "Anecdotal evidence?" Captain Torres interjected from his position with the prosecution. "Correlation does not imply causation. The results could be explained by improved technology or methodology rather than emotional attachment." Roy felt frustration building in his chest, but Amelia's steady presence helped him maintain his composure. They had anticipated this line of argument and prepared accordingly. "Then let us demonstrate," Amelia said, her voice carrying the harmonics of absolute confidence. "We brought samples from the garden. With the tribunal's permission, we can show exactly how our connection enables achievements impossible for either of us alone." The chamber fell silent as the 2 judges conferred quietly with their advisors. Finally, Judge Mercer nodded. "Proceed. But understand that this demonstration will be carefully scrutinized." Roy and Amelia moved to the center of the chamber, where a portable biolab had been set up. They had brought a cutting from one of their most challenging hybrid creations, a plant that required precise emotional resonance to thrive, combining the empathic sensitivity of Zilithian flora with the adaptive resilience of Earth vegetation. "This is a harmony vine," Roy explained to the assembled tribunal. "It's a fusion of Terran climbing roses and Zilithian emotion-responsive moss. The species requires not just proper nutrients and environment, but emotional stability from its caretakers."
Amelia
placed the cutting in a growth medium while Roy connected the biomonitoring equipment. "Alone, neither of us can provide what this plant needs. Human emotional patterns are too chaotic and unpredictable. Zilithian empathic resonance is too intense and overwhelming. But together," Roy said, taking Amelia's hand, "we create something balanced and sustainable." The moment their hands touched, the plant responded visibly, its leaves unfurled with renewed vigor, bioluminescent patterns appearing along its stem in swirling designs that seemed to pulse with their combined heartbeat. The biomonitors showed immediate improvements in cellular activity, nutrient absorption, and growth rate. A murmur of amazement rippled through the chamber. Even Judge Mercer leaned forward to get a better view of the impossible sight. "The plant is responding to our emotional resonance," Amelia explained, her voice filled with wonder, even though she had witnessed this miracle countless times. "Through our connection, Roy's scientific curiosity and my empathic sensitivity create a stable field that allows the plant to thrive. More than that," Roy added, his eyes never leaving the thriving plant, "it's teaching us about the fundamental nature of life itself. This isn't just botany or biology. This is proof that consciousness and emotion are forces of nature as real and powerful as gravity or electromagnetism. High Curator Zethmira stood slowly, her ancient form moving with deliberate grace. In all my centuries of existence, I have never witnessed such a phenomenon. The implications are staggering. Indeed they are, Judge Mercer agreed, her stern expression softening slightly. But the question remains. What are the broader implications for human-Zilithian relations? Can we build policy around individual emotional connections? Winters rose from the gallery, his weathered face bright with excitement. Your Honors, that's exactly what we should be doing. For too long, we've approached interspecies cooperation as a matter of treaties and trade agreements. But Dr. Chen and Dr. Vexeri have discovered something far more fundamental, that different forms of consciousness can actually merge and enhance each other. Nixandra suddenly stood up, her crystalline formations pulsing with patterns Roy had never seen before. High Curator, if I may address the tribunal. You may speak, Nixandra Velthier. I came here believing that Amelia had been corrupted by her work with humans, Nixandra said, her voice carrying harmonics of profound revelation. But observing their work, witnessing what they have accomplished together, I realized that I was wrong. They have not been corrupted. They've been transformed into something greater than either could be alone. She moved closer to the center of the chamber, her gaze fixed on the thriving plant. The Zilithian Science Collective has always believed that emotional attachment compromises scientific objectivity. But what if we have been wrong? What if emotion and consciousness are not obstacles to understanding, but gateways to deeper truths? Lieutenant Park stood up in the gallery, his young face flushed with passion. Sirs, if I may, I have served on 3 different stations in the past 5 years. I've seen human-Zilithian cooperation at its best and worst. What Dr. Chen and Dr. Vexeri have achieved represents a completely new model for how our species can work together. A model based on personal relationships, Captain Torres challenged. That's hardly scalable or sustainable. Why not? Amelia asked, her patterns brightening with renewed hope. What if we established a formal protocol for deep collaboration, partnerships, not just professional exchanges, but genuine emotional and intellectual bonds between individuals from both species? Roy felt his heart racing as he understood the full implications of what she was proposing. A symbiotic covenant, he said, the words coming to him as if from the plants themselves. Formal recognition that some forms of cooperation transcend the boundaries of species and biology. Judge Mercer and High Curator Zethmira exchanged a long look, their expressions unreadable. Finally, Judge Mercer spoke. What you're proposing is unprecedented. It would require fundamental changes to how both our species approach interspecies relations. Change is exactly what we need, Dr. Valdez called out from the gallery. The old models of cooperation have given us trade agreements and diplomatic protocols, but they haven't given us the kind of breakthrough discoveries that Roy and Amelia have achieved. High Curator Zethmira moved to examine the harmony vine more closely, her ancient eyes studying the impossible patterns of light flowing through its leaves. The plant continues to thrive in their presence. Even now, separated from the garden, it shows no signs of stress or decline. Because it's not dependent on location, Roy realized suddenly. It's dependent on connection, as long as Amelia and I maintain our bond, the plant will thrive anywhere. Just as human-Zilithian cooperation will thrive anywhere that genuine connections exist between individuals, Amelia added, her understanding flowing through their shared consciousness. The tribunal chamber fell silent as the full implications of their demonstration settled over the assembled officials. They had come here to judge whether Roy and Amelia's relationship was appropriate. Instead, they had witnessed a fundamental shift in how interspecies cooperation might be approached. Judge Mercer stood, her expression grave but thoughtful. This tribunal finds that while Dr. Chen and Dr. Vexeri have indeed formed an unprecedented personal bond, the evidence suggests that this bond has enhanced rather than compromised their professional effectiveness. High Curator Zethmira nodded slowly. The Zilithian delegation concurs. We have witnessed something that challenges our fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness and cooperation. Therefore, Judge Mercer continued, rather than face disciplinary action, Dr. Chen and Dr. Vexeri will be appointed as the first official interspecies symbiotic liaison team. Their mission will be to develop protocols for deep collaboration partnerships and to serve as a model for future human-Zilithian cooperation. The chamber erupted in applause and excited chatter. Roy felt Amelia's joy flowing through their connection, her luminescent patterns blazing with happiness and wonder. They had not just been vindicated, they had been given the opportunity to transform their love into a force for positive change throughout the galaxy. As the formal proceedings concluded and the various officials began filing out of the chamber, Roy and Amelia found themselves surrounded by supporters and well-wishers. But it was Nixandra who approached them first, her crystalline formations pulsing with what Roy now recognized as profound respect. "Amelia," she said, her voice carrying harmonics of apology and wonder, "I owe you an acknowledgement of error. What you have discovered transcends anything I thought possible." Amelia embraced her former research partner, their Zilithian greeting, allowing a brief sharing of emotions. "You helped me understand how precious this connection truly is," Amelia replied. "Your challenge forced us to prove, not just to others, but to ourselves, that what we have is real and valuable." Dr. Valdez clapped Roy on the shoulder, his weathered face beaming with pride. "You did it, my boy. You didn't just save your relationship, you revolutionized how we think about cooperation itself." Professor Winters nodded approvingly. "Symbiotic covenant protocols you'll develop could change everything. Imagine scientific partnerships where human creativity and Zilithian empathy combine to solve problems neither species could tackle alone." Lieutenant Park approached them with obvious admiration. "Ma'am, what you've accomplished gives me hope for the future. Maybe someday connections like yours won't be unusual or controversial, but just another beautiful part of how different species learn to understand each other." As the crowd gradually dispersed, Roy and Amelia found themselves alone in the chamber, except for the Harmony Vine, which continued to glow with soft bioluminescence in response to their presence. "We did it," Roy said softly, hardly believing that their love had been not just accepted, but officially recognized as a model for the future. "We did more than that," Amelia replied, her patterns shifting to the deep, steady rhythms that indicated perfect contentment. "We proved that love really is a force of nature, capable of creating new forms of life and consciousness." Roy gently touched one of the vine's glowing leaves, marveling at how it responded to their combined presence. "When I first started working in the quantum garden, I thought I was just trying to help plants from different worlds grow together. I never imagined I was actually discovering a new form of consciousness. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson," Amelia said, her hand covering his on the plant's stem. "The most profound discoveries often come not from what we seek, but from what we're willing to let grow naturally when we create the right conditions." They stood together in the quiet chamber, surrounded by the gentle light of their living creation, knowing that their story was far from over. As the first official interspecies symbiotic liaison team, they would face new challenges and opportunities. They would develop protocols that could guide future partnerships between humans and Zilithians, and perhaps even other species they had yet to encounter. But more than that, they would continue to prove that love truly was a universal force, capable of bridging any distance and transcending any difference. In a galaxy filled with countless forms of life, they had discovered that the most powerful connections were not based on similarity, but on the willingness to support and nurture each other's growth. The Harmony Vine pulsed with renewed vigor, its bioluminescent patterns spreading to encompass new growth that seemed to reach toward the stars. It's visible through the chamber's viewport. Like their love, it was no longer confined to a single garden or station, but ready to spread its light throughout the galaxy, proving that the most beautiful things in the universe grew not from the soil of single worlds, but from the connections between souls brave enough to reach across the vast darkness of space and choose to grow together.